Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This sounds like a breakthrough for your committee today, not only taking testimony from former Attorney General William Barr, but now a promise from the Justice Department for a delayed compliance with your subpoena beginning Friday of the Epstein files.
Lawrence, it is a breakthrough. Here is the central fact. We now know there are a lot of documents. You have a Republican chair, Comer, saying there are a lot of documents. There is no excuse now for those documents not to be released to the committee and to the American public. Now, the Justice Department is slow-walking this. They are now promising to get some documents, and they are not the most critical documents. And so what we need to do when we get back to session is to have Thomas Massie and my bill pass the House of Representatives and force the full release. And if Chairman Comer wants all the files released, he should be signing that discharge petition. We're going to have all 212 Democrats sign it, and we'll see which Republicans actually are going to back up with action their request for the full demand of the release of the documents.
Will there ever be a way of knowing, even if your bill passes, that this Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, has actually handed over the entirety of the Epstein files?
Not with certainty, though. There are enough people in the Justice Department who have probably handled these files and people who are career prosecutors that it will be a risk for false or incomplete disclosures. There is always the possibility of a whistleblower, of a career prosecutor coming in saying this was not a full disclosure. They're not releasing things that we have seen. And so the one good news here is that it's not just political appointees like Pam Bondi who have seen this. There are a lot of career prosecutors who have seen this, and that gives us some ability to have a check for full transparency.
On Friday, when you get your first look at the Epstein files, what will you be looking for?
I'll be looking for whether this is actually a good faith effort at release. Are they just releasing things that are already public? You remember Pam Bondi, when she first released the Epstein documents, basically released things that already were in the public domain, and that actually increase the anger? Or are they releasing things that we have not seen? And are they releasing things that the victims want? One other thing that we have talked about, and it actually was facilitated, Lawrence, by your reporting and your show, is on September 3rd, we are for the first time having Bradley Edwards and over a dozen victims of the Epstein saga and abuse come to the Capitol and tell their stories and to center the victims. And that is something that we really need to do.
Yeah, Bradley Edwards is the attorney for those victims and many others who appeared on this program. And as you go forward, Congressman, when you're looking at redactions in the Epstein files, as there surely will be, which redactions would be acceptable to you? What category of redaction, and what kind of redactions would not be acceptable to you?
Certainly any redaction that is protecting the victim's identity or protecting the victim's privacy would be appropriate. Now, ordinarily, they should be contacting the victim's lawyers to work on this and to see what appropriate redactions are. Bradley Edwards has not been contacted. The victims have been sidelined through this process for years. But anything that was protecting their identity, their privacy is appropriate. Where I would have concerns is if there are redactions particularly on financial transactions, if there are redactions on the interviews of famous individuals who may have been involved in these parties and may have been involved in some of the abuse. And so we have to look at who they're trying to protect with the redactions.
We have to fit in a commercial break here. If you could please stay with us, Congressman. I want to hear about your speaking around the country in areas where Republican members of Congress are refusing to face their voters. We'll be right back with Congressman Khanna. The price of coffee is up and going up thanks to Donald Trump's coffee tax. Donald Trump's coffee tariff, which is actually a sales tax on us, is costing every coffee drinker in America, with coffee prices going up 15%. Coffee is literally the textbook economics example of why international trade is necessary and helpful and important. No country in the world produces everything that it consumes, especially coffee. Most countries in the world cannot grow coffee or tea. And so the world imports coffee from a relatively small number of coffee-producing countries. Every country in the world runs a trade deficit on coffee, except the coffee-producing countries, the very few of them. Producing trade deficits are not bad things. They are simply the outcome of one country buying more of a particular product from another country than it sells to that country. Our next guest, Congressman Khanna, said this on social media: I will be introducing bipartisan legislation to repeal tariffs on coffee. We produce less than 1%. And these tariffs on Brazil, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Colombia are a 15 to 20% tax on Americans at the start of their day. Anyone who has a coffee cup always in hand hates this tax. Congressman Khanna is meeting with voters where Republicans refuse to meet with them. He held a benefits over billionaires town hall last night in Reno, Nevada, and held another meeting tonight at a Teamsters Union Hall in Georgia. Back with us is Congressman Khanna. Congressman, tell us what you're hearing out there that Republican members of the House are not hearing because they are refusing to hear from their constituents.
Well, I was in Representative Amadei's district in rural Nevada. 600 people showed up for a Californian doing a town hall because he's refusing to do a town hall. And here's what they're upset about. They're upset that the Republican bill is giving huge tax breaks to billionaires in Silicon Valley, in my district. And while doing that, they're taking away Medicaid and health care from veterans, and they're taking away food assistance from veterans and working class Americans. In Amadei's district, there are a lot of veterans, and some people told me that 47% of veterans are on food assistance. They risk losing that food assistance. One of the points I made is the guy who represents more billionaires than any person in the world in Silicon Valley is saying tax them more. I don't understand how this is populism for Donald Trump. I don't understand what in the world he achieves by giving Silicon Valley more tax breaks when he promised to help veterans and build manufacturing in the middle of the country. And they see through it now. He's losing support.
I have to say, your bill on repealing the coffee tax is possibly the most perfectly targeted way of identifying what the Trump tariffs actually do.
You know, Lawrence, I appreciated your explaining that. Even Richard Nixon, when he had tariffs, exempted coffee. I mean, a coffee tax is not going to create jobs in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or Ohio, or Michigan, or any part of America. We only produce 1%. And that's why I'm working with Representative Don Bacon to introduce a bill to repeal the coffee tax. And this is actually something that many Americans are upset about. Look, we have a history in this country. We started the revolution fighting an irrational tariff against tea. I don't think it's wise to tax Americans' coffee. And it just shows the total irrationality of these tariffs. It's like Why would you tariff something which isn't going to create jobs here and simply is going to raise the price of coffee for Americans when they start their day?
Yeah, the textbook case for tariffs, which is a rare case, was actually Harley-Davidson when they were the only motorcycle manufacturer left in the United States. It was during the Reagan administration, and they got a 5-year tariff on foreign motorcycles from Japan and from Germany. And Harley-Davidson themselves, as a company, recovered with the protection of that tariff. They were able to raise money, they raise their prices a bit. They were able to innovate on how they built their motorcycles. And Harley actually asked for the tariff to be removed after 4 years. And Harley is now a tremendously thriving business. But that's because we were trying to preserve a product that was made in the United States. We don't have a coffee industry. We don't have coffee farmers to support by blocking coffee or raising the price of coffee from Colombia.
We don't. And look, the person who had a thoughtful approach to tariffs was President Biden. He said, in industries like steel or like electric vehicles, where there has been unfair dumping, where there have been other countries who haven't played by the rules, we need to have strategic tariffs combined, by the way, with federal investment so we can build industry and have the jobs here, the jobs and reindustrialization across the country. Coffee, there is none of that. And what you're actually doing is hurting Americans in terms of the price, and then you're hurting the economies of Brazil, of Colombia, of other nations. That actually leads to the very migrant crisis that this administration is trying to solve. So it is just a totally lack of thought-out policy. And the good news is there are Republicans like Don Bacon who see that, and they're both Republicans, Democrats, and independents who say, I don't want more tax on coffee. I think that this case symbolizes the irrationality of Donald Trump's economic policy.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for joining us tonight.